Hi guys, welcome back to this new tutorial. My name is Maus from pixeltrain. This time not a part of Houdini Practice Hour. I'm still working on the next chapter of the Houdini Practice Hours, so I thought for this week it would be great to have some bonus lessons so that you can work more with your objects, which you have done in the second part here. And I promised you to make some bonus lessons, so here they are. Today I want to talk with you about the 3D-Coat integration between Houdini and 3D-Coat. And I use 3D-Coat for many purposes. I use 3D-Coat, for example, for concepting, but also for painting. You have seen that in the banana project. And I also work in 3D-Coat, for example, for Retopo and UVs. So I thought it's a good idea to talk a little bit about this workflow here. So if you followed along, you have these files. If you want to test now the whole thing and you don't want to model everything, you can have these files here. I've placed them on my Gumroad account, link below in the comments, and you can have them for a really small fee as a thank you. So I have now my toothbrush scene, and I think I deactivate the textures for a moment and I go here out. So this is the scene. And the first thing I want to show you, or the topic of this tutorial, I want to show you how to bake out normal maps in 3D-Coat and use them here in Houdini. And then we can texture in the next step the toothbrush in 3D-Coat. So to bake out a normal map, we need a high poly and a low poly object. And if you don't know the workflow, how to get normal maps and how the whole thing works, in the last Houdini Practice Hour in the toothbrush, I showed the whole workflow with Substance Painter. In the first lesson of the Substance Painter part, I showed exactly how you work with a high poly and low poly object in Substance Painter and why you have these two objects. So same workflow here. So inside of my brush sub network, we have here the brush, and if I go into the brush, you see here my tree. I have my low poly brush here at this null object. Be aware that we have a UV here on the low poly brush, and this is extremely important because if you ever want to bake something out, you need UVs on the object. Otherwise it doesn't work. And I've written out this low poly object with the FBX ROP. So if you click it here, you see the options, you see I'm in the job folder, low poly brush here as an FBX, that's okay here. I deactivated the export in ASCII format because I don't like this and sometimes it makes problems in external applications, so I deactivated that. And the high poly brush is only made here with the VDB conversion, so I converted our brush, which we've modeled, into a VDB with the help of a VDB from polygons. Then we smoothed it a little bit so that we get a nicer surface, and then we directly converted it back. And the idea behind that is that you get a smoothed brush, but on the other way, you normally can add now here in the volume world effects. For example, you can remove stuff without any problems of topology. You can add noises into the volume and so on. So this could be extended if you like. This high poly brush here has, let's make a middle mouse button click here, 80,000 polygons. So this is really high poly. And I used ROP FBX again here. Export ASCII is deactivated and I saved it in my project as a high poly brush. So in the folder from Houdini. And now we switch over to 3D-Coat. And I assume that you didn't use it a lot. So I explain a little bit about the concept here of 3D-Coat. And if you're interested in the product itself, you find it here in the web on 3dcoat.com. And you see it's a really cheap software in comparison with, for example, ZBrush or Mudbox. It's only $380. And the most important part for me is that here all licenses are permanent. And this is a really cool option, I think. And this product is so powerful. Like I've said, I use it all the time for different ideas. You can use it for texturing, sculpting, Retopo, UVs, and so on. So let's switch here into the software. If you start 3D-Coat, it looks like that here. You have here a quick access window where you can think about what you want to do with this software. And I have to confess that people which I show 3D-Coat or train in 3D-Coat sometimes are a little bit, shocked by the user interface and the workflows, because the workflows are not so easy to understand. I hope I can give you here some advice. The idea behind this is that you have rooms here, and you see there's a paint room, a tweak room, a retopo room, UV room, sculpt room, and a render room. And these rooms here are connected, and 3D-Coat also can have 3 kinds of objects. So if you are more interested in learning 3D-Coat, please let me know in the comments. I will explain it in more detail, but for this lesson I keep it short. So the normal workflow which you have as, for example, a concept designer is you start in Sculpt room, sculpting something. Let's do something. You have here this menu here which you can use, but I really used to tap here this space bar to have a quick access menu where you get all the tools. So I go here and say I want to have a primitive here. I click here. Now I have a sphere in the middle of the scene. Navigation is here the Alt key, so Alt, left, middle, and right mouse button. You see it's like in Houdini, easy. And if you have here now a primitive, you have a whole bunch of different kind of primitives which you can use. And you see these primitives are parametric, so you can take here, for example, parameters and change them here if you like. So I say this is something I want to have. And if you now make a look here to the right side, you see here is a pop-up which is named a Sculpt tree. And I'm on a layer here which is named volume 5. I can rename it. So I rename it shape by double clicking here. And you see a V here, which means this is a voxel layer. We can have 2 kinds of layers, surface layers and voxel layers are volumes, same like the VDBs in Houdini. So I use the voxel approach here. And if I want to place now this thing here into this voxel layer, I press the Enter key or use here apply with different modes. Let's click here apply, and now we have it. And if you see now here a flickering, that's due to the fact that this tool is still active, so you can move now this object around and you have a second one here. And what I want to demonstrate now here is the fact that this is really volume. So if you go now here and say I want to have now a sphere, and I place the sphere, for example, here, which intersects here with this droppy thing. You can change here the size or whatever you want. And then I don't want to apply with add, I want to apply with subtract here. I apply, you get something like this here. And you maybe now see this jaggy edge here. And this jaggy edge is the same like you know from Houdini, is the voxel size. If you have not enough voxels, you get not a nice representation of your volume. So I make undo. You see in the moment we have only 20,000 triangles here. I undo that. And to make now this here to more voxels, you can go here to the layer and you have here different layer operations. And if you go here to this gritty thing, you see increased resolution for the current object. And if you click here, you see we've doubled now the resolution of this here. And we have now 80,000 triangles here. And if we place now this here with subtract again, you see it's much better here from the resolution, because now you have more voxels to work with. And we can do it again, so why not? Times 4 and do it again, and now we see this here looks much better, and then I can go to the grow tool and so on. So in this world here, I can sculpt now. In the background, we get a code. So the name refers to it. The code, if you press the W key, is this polygon surface which builds itself all the time to represent the volume. So W again to go out. But I can sculpt now without thinking about stretching on surfaces and so on. You have, beside of this voxel sculpting tools here, also if you need a surface mode. So if you go here now and click here on the V, you can make now from this layer here a surface layer. And you get a whole bunch of different tools here, because on surfaces you can have more details and you can have more tools. And you can switch in 3D-Coat all the time between this surface mode, and if I click again, we have to make a voxel representation again of our state, the voxel world. So enough about this room here now, only to understand this. The next step you normally then have to do is you make then a polygon mesh out of that. And the polygon mesh has to be a low poly mesh. Same thing we've done in Houdini. To do that, we have to retopo it. And that's exactly the thing the retopo room is for. So if you switch here to the retopo room, you have here a sculpt tree with your sculpt shape. And here is your retopo objects. And I can name this. For example, this is now vase. Really creative name. And then we have here tools for making retopo, and it's really the same like topo build in Houdini. So you can now select a tool here, for example, the points and faces tool, place points here on the surface. I do some here really quickly and make then a right mouse button click between them to make here polygon strips, and you see they are placed always on the surface. I can use the right mouse button to move them. And if I now retopo the whole thing, then I can bake out the differences between the high poly mesh and the low poly mesh. And this can be a normal map, or it can be, for example, an ambient occlusion, or it can be a displacement, and so on. So then, if we have all of that, we can export this low poly, high poly object from the retopo room. So if you go here, we can export all the retopo objects which we have here, or we can import them. This is something we do in a moment. And then we can, if we like, go to the paint room. And in the paint room, we see now our voxel object, which we can paint, but we don't want it to paint because we have a low poly object, which we have in the retopo room, which is a retopo object. One thing I've forgotten, after you've retopoed, you want to have a UV map. So we have in the retopo room UV commands here. So we can unwrap here this retopo object and so on. You don't need to go to the UV room. It's meant for different purposes, and you have absolutely the same tools. So I really don't use the UV room a lot because I work in this workflow, and so I have all my tools in the retopo room. But there's a UV room, a special room here, and then we can bake out here something we do in a moment. And then we can go here to paint and start painting and exporting. And this is something I showed in the banana project. So if you're interested in that, go into the banana project. There you see it. And yeah, maybe in the next lesson when we paint our toothbrush.